and welcome to Lynda's coaching space. This is us, this is my coaching room, and today I've invited onto my beautiful coaching couch my friend and client and someone who's now delving into the realms of coaching herself is Amy Edwards. So welcome, Amy. So today what we're going to do is Amy's going to ask me questions and put me on the spot about coaching and how I show up as a coach. So
I'm going to get my own back. Now I've got Lynda on the couch. So my first question, Lynda, is what does coaching mean to you, and how does coaching differ from other types of supportive help that people might be looking at?
Well, coaching to me is I'm so grateful to have fallen into coaching. I'm not quite sure how I got here, but anyway, it just feels like what I've been practicing for my whole life, even though when I was a young person thinking about my career, coaching wasn't even a thing. So just love working with people and being able to catalyse growth and change and to help them reach their goals and dreams. So that's what coaching means to me. The next bit, which is about how does it differ from therapy and other modalities, is that coaching is all about looking at where you are right now and where you want to be. It's about the dream and the vision, and then working out why we're not there yet, like what's in the middle that's stopping us from getting there. So there is some unravelling and some really in-depth and interesting discussions, and it's not as focused on the past as therapy is. So even if you've had trauma in the past, that might be in the forefront always, even in the present moment, that we don't have to go there if you don't want to. That often sometimes we may reflect on the past, but it's very reflective, and it's really just to give some context of the space you're in right now. But the focus is future, and what skill set, what learning, what new perspectives would help you to get where you want to be. Yeah. And I think one of the most important things for me as a coach is that when you come into my room and say, this is what I really want, that I believe that you can have that. And in fact, I sit here with all my heart and go, oh, I can see so much more for her. So I actually, at that stage, I build a relationship with your future self. Yeah.
And keep her present and in the room.
I do. I believe in her. Yeah.
Which is a pretty amazing and unique relationship to have, really, with someone who sort of not only is willing to accept you exactly as you are in this time and space, but, you know, your secret dreams and desires and the things you've probably been denying to yourself are also given some space and room to breathe.
Yeah.
And a safe space to land.
And I see you now as perfect in the form that you are. Like every time a woman's in front of me, I both see them as perfect and see what they want at the same time. So I don't think there's a problem to solve here, if you know what I mean. It's a beautiful, feels more like a discovery than...
Yeah, quest for potential.
Yeah, potential is a good word.
I guess. So my next question... your approach has always made me feel supported and understood, much to what we've just described. What core philosophies or principles guide your work as a coach?
So one of the things that I always have quite forefront in my mind is a serenity prayer, and I say that I have it forefront in my mind, but I can never remember it verbatim. But it's actually about how being able to accept things you can't change, to be able to change the things you can, and to be wise enough to know the difference. And so often we spend a lot of energy thinking about things that we can't change. Like we can't change, we can't control how other people are going to perceive us. Yeah. But what we can do is we can be so solid in who we are and knowing who we are, that whatever other people's opinions of us doesn't matter, it'll just bounce off. And that's the state I want for myself, and I want for all women, is to be so solid and proud and about who they are and what's important to them, that other people's opinions don't wobble that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in your coaching room, your in-person space at the moment, where we've had many a conversation. Can you give people a flavour of what a typical coaching session might look like? It's never felt one size fits all. Like, how do you tailor it to the client who's in front of you at the time?
Well, always the very first session is about talking about that vision and where you want to go. And the important thing about that for me is, like, you hear about goals. I'm actually more about intention and about the feeling that you want. So it's really important for me in that first session to get to the nitty gritty about that. The sessions themselves have the same structure. Like we always talk about, it's really funny because I know Amy and other clients, my first question is always, so what's going well? And it's a question.
Luckily Lynda has a long driveway because I had to give that some thought over the years.
There are other clients that get in here and go, oh, you're going to ask that question. I haven't thought about it. It's really funny. It's such a basic question, but it's one we're not used to starting with. And there is a reason for that, and that's because when we look at the positive stuff, it helps us feel more motivated, and you're more likely to take in any other information in the session. So it's always where we start. At the end of every session, we always have action steps. So the very next part is talking about those action steps. And if there's action steps not being taken, then rather than me beating you with a big stick, it's about, so how come? What is the thing that's tripped you up there? And sometimes it's just people haven't had time or whatever, but there's usually something else around that.
Yeah, or the step's too large, and you just need to actually break it down to its fundamental parts. Try again the next week.
Because it's all about experimentation.
Yeah.
And then often, because of what's happened in the previous session, I might have some sort of an idea about what we're going to talk about. But sometimes in that moment, when we're talking about the week and the things that haven't happened, something else could come up. So very much in my sessions, it's about what we're talking about in the session and what's forefront for you. And so even though I might have this resource sitting here ready to use, it's like, let's go this other way and we'll just start talking in a different direction. Because the sessions aren't about me, like they're out about what's most forefront for you.
It's another thing that separates out coaching from like a consulting or a mentoring service, is that actually it's very client led. And even if you're doing a program that has some prescripted exercises, if something's come up in your week, then you can pivot and take the session in a different way, and you can leave actually feeling like you can breathe and with a solution for the short term thing. And then there's scope too to tie that into the bigger goal and what you've learned about yourself in the process. But there is that firefighting help as well if we need it.
Yes, and as part of my program also, depending on whether you've doing a 12-week or 6-month, there is 1 or 2 freebie emergency sessions, because life happens and sometimes you just need someone to help you process the stuff that's going down. And so that's something that's really important for me, because it's amazing what can happen in a week really in between sessions, isn't it? And this is always about growth. Isn't like this lovely straight line. There are whirly bits and curly bits that happen in the middle, and it's just rolling with that. You just got to be with it.
There's no expectation. Like, as much as Lynda's the best cheerleader in the world for the best version of you out the other end, there's no expectation as to where you get. Like, it all unravels becomes becomes clear as time goes on, and evolves in its own time. And some of those, like the sessions that you might not have been anticipating when I walk through the door, are the ones probably that stand out as having made the biggest momentum change.
Yeah, and often I think other clients, I don't know if this is true of you, I can ask you that in this moment in front of a camera, is that it often just feels like a chat. Like it often doesn't feel like a lesson or a...
No, that's definitely true. I mean, our most recent session definitely started as a dog walk. And there may have been some coaching by the end. And I think probably both of us knew as we set out on the dog walk which direction it was going to go. But no, it's always a safe space, and we've coached online when I've been overseas, and we've coached in person, and somehow that magic and that space and that sort of centering an opportunity to be present in a space with you has always been awesome and helpful.
And I'll never forget Amy. So Amy was one of my very first practice clients when I was very nervous, and luckily Health Coach Institute, who I trained through, gave us scripts. So luckily I was able to sit there with a piece of paper and basically just read her questions off the paper. And it was, I remember Amy coming in on her first session when I was asking her what she wanted, and she said, I just want to be heard. And I thought, I can do that. Like, yep, I've got these scripts and I've got all this training that's really new and stuff, but I can listen. And that's one of the, I think, biggest thing is that you have this hour or this hour and a half of my attention on you.
Yeah.
Not thinking about anything else. It's just you and me.
And it provides space for you to be truthful then with yourself, with a witness, in a way that like prior to coaching, I was someone who ruminated all the time and went over and over things, but actually just having a space where you can come and speak things out and hear what sounds true and what actually doesn't quite add up, and pulling these together and getting yourself out of that cycle of repeated thought that can be quite just tunnel vision like quite narrow, and that piece about perspective, and inviting you to look at things from a different perspective, and Lynda providing perspective, all those sorts of things just take the heat out of some of those.
I remember one day, I can't even remember what we were talking about at the time, but you said to me, I was so close to the problem, like it was right here, and all I could see was the wall. And she said, what you've given me today is that ability to step back and see that there are sides, and there's, you know, I can go over or around, but at the time that all you could see was the wall, you didn't know there was a way.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound like a rocket science idea, but we're talking a good couple of years ago since we discussed that the first time, and I have definitely referred back to that. When overwhelm happens, it's really empowering to just know that, you know, if I'm looking at this from above, and I take that literally because I will go and find a mountain as my sort of practical solution to the problem, again identified in this room, but you know, a bit of distance, a slightly different reframe, it's something that I've used time and time again.
Okay, so the perspective I come from is not that I am the one sitting here with all the knowledge. My perspective is that the person in front of me, so Amy, when it was you, when it was us together, like it was that you know what you need, you know what you want, and it's about me just asking you the questions to get that out of you. And it's something that I had to calm myself down on when I was first training, because you as a someone looking objectively, you do get to see patterns and things easier, I think. I still need people to talk to for my own stuff. Looking at it yourself, as you say, you go around in those patterns and it's hard to see. So I would gain some perspective of what I thought was going on, and I'd want to go, oh, so this is happening. And I just have to calm myself, go, how do I make that a question? What I don't want anyone to think that they need me. I want them to see that they have all the answers and that you're the wise one.
Yeah, I certainly have much more capacity now to much more awareness of the rhetoric that I'm hearing in my head, sort of separating out from that, coming back to some questions. I mean, I fell in love with coaching, so I've also sort of been learning some of the behind the scenes tips and tricks, and I think not running in with the answer, because of course when you're talking to a friend or when you're talking to a family member, our inclination is always to solve the problem or to offer a solution, and there is so much to be gained from working with a coach who will allow you to get there and tease it out of you so that you then have the conviction that actually that was the right thing for you going forward. And whether it was a struggle when you started or not, you're very good at it now. So there we go.
And it's all about trusting yourself. Like, that's one of my main things too. Like, it's about acceptance and courage and trust, like I talked about in the Serenity Prayer. And what I want for you and for every woman that I connect with is for them to be able to trust themselves and go, yeah, I've got this. I know what I need.
For a woman, I mean, I was the biggest skeptic in the world when we first got together. No woo-woo stuff was high on the list.
She actually said that. No woo-woo, Lynda.
And now it comes as a surprise whenever I show an interest.
Mrs. I don't want to future pace. That's too uncomfortable for me.
No, I mean, I still tighten up at the idea, but that's maybe not for this recording.
No, we'll ask the question again. We can cut that whole bit out.
At the point where I came to you for coaching, I was so overwhelmed, and I was just kind of getting through the day, doing what I'd always done, keeping my head down and pushing through, but I didn't feel that I had any spare capacity. My energy was low. I was burnt out through work-related stress, really. For the woman who's coming to you or considering coaching, who finds herself in that state, how is it that coaching isn't another thing on the to-do list?
The answer to that is about prioritizing you and knowing that all that other stuff, that how you spend your time, how you show up at work, how you show up in your family, is dependent on how you view yourself and how much you value yourself. So coaching is about valuing yourself enough to go, you know what? This is not sustainable for me. I can't live in overwhelm. I can't live in stress. Something has to change. And the reason that you haven't been able to sort it out yourself is actually that you've probably already tried a lot of stuff. You've probably already tried things out, and either they haven't stuck or you haven't found the thing on your own that is going to make the big difference. And one of the things that makes a really big difference is really knowing yourself, knowing what you need, knowing what you value, knowing what brings you joy and what lights you up. Because knowing that stuff, it's we talked a lot about shoulds. Things that you think you should do, and when it comes to things like even exercise or self-care stuff, when it's a should, there's no motivation. So one of the things you've got to find out is what you enjoy, what actually feels really good, and when you can start doing that, and when you know yourself well enough to know what your values are, the priorities get really clear. And then you're not spending time on things that aren't important. And also the energy is another aspect, because when you're in that sort of overwhelm aspect, you just don't have the energy. So some basic stuff like hydration and things like that are really important, so that you've got enough energy to be motivated and to try different things. So what's your perspective of what helped you to get out of that stress and overwhelm? What was the most helpful?
I think if you're sat there and listening to this and struggling to answer the question, what do you want? Like, it's quite easy for us to know a shopping list of things that we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know the answer, like if that feels out of reach, I think that's a really good indication that coaching might be something super beneficial, because that question alone, when I was in that state, was incredibly overwhelming, and to be heard was the answer, but also for someone to listen long enough for me to figure out what else it was that I wanted was part of that. I had certainly come up against the fact that I'd taken some time off. I'd tried various things. I was actually coming to your exercise classes. I was sort of clinging on to the things that I knew would get me by. But something else had to change. And from a coaching perspective, it was having someone else to do the believing for me by that stage.
Yeah.
Someone else who thought it was possible, who, you know, oh, actually, this week you just need to drink some water. Oh, that feels like something I can do. Yeah. And that is where we started, because that's where I was at the time. Equally, if you're not in that state, there's 100 other reasons why coaching can help, and that's why I keep coming back for more.
I think one of the things too is, one of the reasons as women we get into that overwhelmed state, and I can definitely identify with past version of myself that was really committed to living in that way, is that, you know, I value doing for other people and doing things high quality. And I mean, as a vet too, there was a certain amount of like pride and quality in the work that you do, and it boils down to doing things for others, which sounds like a great cause, but sometimes the payment for that is that we lose touch with what we want, and that our energy just gets drained because it's always outward giving. And so a part of the process is also noticing, what do I need, and it starts with as basic as water, but is also, you know, time up a mountain, or finding out what it is that does help you restore that energy, like what gives you energy and what takes it away. It's a one session that we do, and it's a very powerful session.
Oh, we could talk for hours.
And we do.
Talk for hours. We will probably continue to talk. But thank you very much for answering my questions from the couch today.
What surprised you about coaching, Mrs. I was sceptical for a start off, and whatever. What did you get that you didn't ask for?
I know when a decision feels like the right decision for me in the long term.
Because when you came to me, it was very, I don't think you saw a way out of the career, of the life you were living.
Yeah.
And yet now,
things
are quite different.
I'm locoming, I'm experimenting with how I want work to look and how I want work to feel, and all of that is kind of, and I've been able to lay down stress about finances and all that sort of thing in order to take time I've needed to go home for family, like all these things that align with my values and my priorities that might have felt like the wrong thing to do have actually felt much more like freedom. And that's one answer. The other answer to the question is it's much quieter on the inside of my head these days, which is not so much something, it's more of something that I've left behind rather than that I have taken on, although the peace and quiet is rather nice. Because I had a lot of negative self-talk that was driving how I showed up and how I moved through life, and every now and then the quiet still takes me by surprise.
You're welcome. No, and I say that lightly because I'm always very mindful of the fact that it's the client that does the work. Like, all I do is ask questions that stir up new perspectives and give more choices. I think